Welcome to Burn the Rules with Chet Hirani. This podcast is for people who know leadership isn't about titles, noise, or ticking boxes. It's about how you think, how you show up, and how you perform when pressure is real. I'm Chet Hirani, and I work with leaders and high performers across business, sport, and life all over the world who want to take control of how they lead and perform. Not by copying someone else's rules, but by understanding themselves first. Every conversation here is grounded in experience, reflection, and practical insight. So if you're ready to question what leadership has been taught to be and decide what it means for you, you're in the right place. Most high performers aren't stuck because they're not good enough. They're stuck because they've outgrown the version of themselves that got them there. And the system, the promotion, the merit increases, the visibility is still rewarding the old version, which means it's actively keeping them exactly where they are. Anam Irfan has spent 16 years inside some of the most complex organizations in the GCC. She's led total rewards of 37,000 employees at Majid Al Futtaim. She stepped into AI-driven hiring as CPO at Bytespark. And she spent years watching brilliant high-performing leaders hit a ceiling they can't explain. In this conversation, she says the things the HR world doesn't usually say out loud. Great talent doesn't always rise on merit. That the traditional hiring funnel is a trap. That your CV is probably doing you more damage than you know. And that AI isn't coming for leaders who think. It's coming for the ones who were never really leading. So if you're building a career in the GCC or anywhere else in the world, or leading a team in this market, this one's for you. Hi, Anam. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Chait. How are you doing?
I'm doing I'm doing great. Well, probably a little bit better than what you're doing currently, what the situations that are going on from Dubai. So obviously for the listeners and all the viewers out there, Anam is based in Dubai. We've known each other it feels like we've known each other for a number of years, but what is it? It's coming close to about a year or two now, I think it is.
Absolutely. Around 2 years almost now.
Yeah. I mean, we've met face to face when I was out there. We spent time together as well, so which was really, really nice. But look, today is all about you, okay? And we want to hear everything that what's been going on in your world lately. But the first question I want to basically ask you, Anam, is what's taking up your energy right now?
It's a great question. So there are a lot of things that are taking up my energy right now. So giving a bit of perspective, I'm a mom to a 1 month old baby girl, Sophia.
There we go.
So that's taking the most of my energy right now.
It was an intentional question.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. And so she is that little, but takes that much of energy. Alhamdulillah, all blessed. So she is my second child, and the first one is Musa. He's mashallah now almost 6.5 years old, turning 7. But yeah, life has been very rumbly over the last couple of months. Sophia was born in Feb, and then, as you know, the region went into a really crazy, I would say, mayhem of a crisis end of Feb. So it's been juggling motherhood and the uncertainty in the region, and then the back to school, which never happened and keeps getting extended, which is very interesting to see how online learning is now. A second nature for us in the morning. Very, very, I would say, chaotic mornings. But yeah, I cannot say that we're blessed enough to be living in, I would say, in Dubai, and safe enough to consider that despite all that is going around, my home and my family feels absolutely safe.
That's really, really reassuring to hear as well. I mean, lots of things going on. We don't obviously like to sort of listen and read to what's going on in the actual social media worlds with everything that's happening. I, for one, try to sort of not look at those sort of things and prefer just to speak directly to you guys who are out there as well, just to check in to see how you are all doing. But look, we are where we are in that situation. We can probably talk a lot about it, but that's not what we're here about for that podcast. We don't want to make a podcast or an episode about those sort of things. This is about you. So, Anam, you've been in the UAE for almost, 35 years, right? So you've seen a lot of change and development throughout those times and worked across some of the biggest organizations in the region. And now you advise leaders and talent on how to navigate the GCC market, which is a really interesting thing here. So, what do most people still fundamentally misunderstand about how careers actually work in the area?
I would really say is that sometimes, and I think for me also, um, this region, and everybody needs to understand that this region is very predominantly loaded on relationship building, the entire GCC region. When we talk about careers, building careers here, that's one thing that we need to keep in mind. Besides the performance, you might be a top performer, high performer, but if you're not visible, in the organization, if you don't keep yourself actively advocating with the right people, building the relationships along the way, then a career can go so much. So I think one of the main, I would say, takeaways of really effective career building, especially in the region, would be the visibility that you build for yourself, would be the great relationship building that you kind of take through in the journey. So I think that's something that I would say that the region clearly demands it, unlike the other regions that I've actually worked with.
Do you know, that's one of the most fascinating things that I've learnt and had the privilege to experience coming out to the GCC areas over the number of years, is that how important the relationship building actually is. I just think it's fascinating because I'm born and brought up here in the UK, in London. And yes, there's relationship building. Yes, there's networking opportunities. There are all these sort of things. But what I have noticed is that when I'm here and there is an opportunity and you know somebody and you send messages or you speak by saying, you know what, I actually know somebody that you should be connected to. Let me reach out to them and do it. Great. The amount of times that I've heard that being said here and that never happens. Whereas when you're in the GCC region and it's been said, it's not even a second thought. It's immediately done. It's done in front of you. Like they've basically just connected you directly. Say, hey, look, I've just sent the message across, or you've just basically done an introduction within the WhatsApp messaging. And I think that's fantastic. And just it's in everybody's, it's almost like it's just, you said that the region pushes people to do things like this, and I think that's one of the most fascinating things about it, is that that's when people say what's the difference or what sets this apart from other areas. I would say this is a fundamental one, because so many people that I've spoken to have said exactly the same thing. The fact that relationship building and networking is key, and that's what translates to visibility.
It
Okay,
does.
not just having a document and saying, okay, let's pass your CV across and all these sort of things. It doesn't work that way all the time. You want to
100%.
understand and know the person, don't you? Okay, and
Yeah,
it's fast. It's
absolutely.
really, yeah,
And Jay, this is what I typically even help in what I do right now. When I coach leaders, talents, navigating the job market and everything, I consistently use a methodology that I call access mapping. And that typically is, instead of asking what jobs are available, I tend to ask who are the decision makers in the space? How do we get access to them? So, for example, if I'm working with very senior candidates entering the GCC market, then we map together target companies. We look at key leaders. We look at the influence circles in the region. And then we design their intentional outreach for them and warm introductions, because that's what I said, relationship building is everything in the region. And then I position that candidate around business problems, not looking at the vacancies that are there perhaps on LinkedIn or any other social platforms that might be there, job boards might be there. This kind of then shifts the game, because instead of applying and recklessly applying to multiple jobs, never hearing back, maybe perhaps from recruiters, waiting to be known, you're actually pitching yourself forward there. So it's simple, but it's so powerful, because opportunities in this region, like I said, are relationship driven and they're not application driven. So that's kind of what I try to teach or coach the clients that I work with, that this is how you need to navigate this market, and I call it access mapping.
yeah. I love that, relationship driven, not application driven. Yeah, that's a tagline straight away, because that's basically what effectively what it is. But having said that, with everything that you've that the your experience out there in the corporate sector, What pressures do people not see when they look at your sort of position? What do you sort of face in these sort of circumstances?
Well, so I think the entire region is dominated by the fact that we are heavily expat oriented, right? And that is itself a pressure in itself. So, it's back home when you're in home, whether it's Pakistan from where I am, whether it's UK from where you are. One, God forbid, loses a job and you're sitting in your home country. Here, what happens here is that if you, God forbid, lose your job, then you have to pack your bags and go home. And that itself is a pressure that, the expat population typically hold on tight to their seats, and they don't want to obviously be in a situation where they kind of lose an opportunity, which means often at times when you've heard that this region is very overloaded or working, it's a 9 to 5 job, but it's long working hours here, there is no work life integration and things like that. It's yeah, so all of those kind of issues, or culture, a lot of effort being put together on a culture enhancement, taking care and kind of marrying your personal and work life together. That is what the region's challenges have been. It's simply because of the fact that the people have that ongoing stress on the back of their head, that they have to do well on their job no matter what. So I think that's one of the challenges sometimes that can happen to be in regions like this, but it does come with a lot of perks too at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that's for me one of the ones that really stand out in the
Yeah.
book.
Would you say that's also down to the individual though, right? Because yes, in this sort of region, you've got long working hours and people say there's not much of a sort of a life after work. But that's not quite the case though, is it? There are a lot of sort of things happening after sort of work or when they're finishing, etc. Would you say that's down to sort of the individual's preference though?
For sure. I mean, you have to put that boundary by yourself. So,
Mm,
and how do you draw that boundary is the kind of persona that you bring forward. So you have to say that, okay, from here onwards, my work finishes. If it's at 5, the max I'll stretch that 6 or whatever, and then I have a life after work. So I think it's depends upon individual to individual, and Dubai or the region has a lot to offer. After work, the restaurants and the cafes and the nightlife is bustling here, so there's a lot to look forward to even after the working hours. But also often at times, while you can self balance that, you will also see that again, because it is very expat dominated, a lot of the socialization that is done typically after work are also amongst your colleagues. So you're really going around that same kind of group of people that you meet at work, and if you're an expat here without maybe a family or so, then you're also meeting them post work. And if that's the case, then there is so much more importance that needs to be placed on the whole integration, the balance, and we're getting better there. A lot of policies and procedures now the government is now putting forward is very progressive in nature, tries to emulate what is happening in the West too when it comes to perhaps leaves, maternity leaves, paternity leaves, a lot of flexible remote working. We're now getting a lot more acceptable in those kind of arrangements versus what has been predominantly very favorably seen in the West. So I think the region is catching up, which is fantastic for us, but there is still room to go ahead, for sure.
yeah. Still a great place to be though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you went from leading HR for 37,000 people, yeah, at is it Majid Al Futtaim, to a CPO at an AI hiring platform. Okay. Then
Absolutely.
stepping away to advise leaders and talent directly. That's not a straight sort of line. Okay. Can you walk me through what drove you, okay, with each move? Because you went from managing thousands, tens of thousands of people to doing something completely almost different.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I've been in the HR space now for over 16 plus years. And the industries that I've typically worked in, Chait, are nuclear. I started my work experience with the energy sector. So starting with oil and gas, then went to construction, then nuclear. Then I went to much of a thing which is retail and predominantly e-commerce within MAF. And then finally Bytespark with the whole AI driven recruitment platform. And then now finally advising all our lovely candidates out there who are struggling to find jobs in the region and coaching with career placement services. Now, I chose this journey intentionally because I had done good 16 years in the corporate space. With when Bytespark happened, I really consciously saw the shift that was happening with the whole AI coming in the HR space. Years of working as an HR BP, a VP HR, leading the teams across different functions and different industries, I really saw that gap that was there in the integration of using AI platforms and AI tools in the HR space. And you'll be surprised that the most heavily used case within, if companies are actually implementing or playing around with AI, the heaviest use case is actually within HR. So I wanted to make sure that I, kind of passionately be part of a company which is UAE born and doing great strides in terms of recruitment being done with a completely different look and feel and a lot of agility and speed to market, completely changing the game, the how recruitment is done. So for me, exploring that, then giving my expertise of HR over the years of how really recruitment challenges need to be overcome within organization, or what are recruiters, corporate recruiters really looking for in candidates when the job is actually posted to the time when the job is fulfilled, are real challenges, and then working with a company like Bytespark and helping their platform take shape, go into that agility that is required, and completely change the game how recruitment is done, reducing the time to hire by maybe 50, 60%, improving the hiring efficiency. Instead of taking like weeks on an open role, we would like surface the role one day, and after 3 days following the opening of the role and the hiring manager notes, we would actually give the top shortlist to the companies. So from weeks working on that role to just 3 days working on that role with a success rate of 95%, those are numbers that you typically don't see in the market or don't see in the region. So I wanted to really drive that efficiency into the first recruitment, I would say into the first funnel of HR, which starts from talent and hiring the talent. So, and then obviously, while I was working with Bytespark, I was always coaching candidates on navigating the job market. But then I think it was more like with the personal change of having a baby and everything and coming back with a little bit of a break and rest, I think I thought that navigating into the coaching side would be the most effective way in how I give back, not only training or coaching candidates to find jobs and placement opportunities in the region with the network that I've built, but also helping them learn the AI space also, but not just on recruitment, on the entire funnel of HR. And that's what I typically do now.
Wow, wow, wow. And you have built a really, really great network there as well. So if anybody is thinking of tapping into those sort of regions, I would strongly recommend you reach out to
Absolutely.
Anam in that respect. Honestly, she's brilliant. I've worked with her too. So that's a testament to everything that you do. But you said, I want to touch on this. You said that great talent doesn't always rise on merit. That visibility and access to the right networks matter just as much, right? You mentioned those sort of things, if
Yeah.
not more. Okay. That's a pretty hard thing to say out loud in the HR world, right? Could you put a case towards this?
So the reason why I said it, and I have a live case towards it. I worked with Jade, incredibly high performing leaders during my various tenures. People driving strong GMV growth, scaling marketplaces, leading transformation of 15 plus countries. Jade, on paper, they are exceptional, right? But behind the scenes, they probably have hit that ceiling. And what does that mean? I remember one person or one leader in particular, brilliant, execution focused, always the go to problem solver, deeply respected in the organization. But he was also there in every decision, in every escalation, in every detail. And the business was growing, and so was the dependency on him. So, and that's where the shift started to happen. Because at that level, the leadership then is no longer about being the best operator, it's also about creating other leaders, right? And that's very important. So, we then kind of worked on helping him step back from control, build real ownership with his team, redefine success, not as output, but as impact through others. And that transformation was powerful, not just for him, but for the organization too. So typically, we need to help. And this is why I coach even the top 1%, because these high achievers often then find themselves stuck in the workspace. Why are they stuck in the workspace? Because nobody tells them that yes, you're the top 1%. The system rewards your current behavior, promotions, merit increases, and all of that stuff, and visibility. You're getting everything. It reinforces exactly what you need to get, what you need to actually let go of, right? Because coaching at this level is not about advice, it's about creating the space to unlearn, the challenge, and the stepping into fundamentally a very different leadership mindset. Growth at the top is actually about doing more, and it's about thinking differently. So that's what I try to train people, that if you are at the top 1% or a top talent in any organization, the system is rewarding you, you're getting promoted, you're getting merit increases, but that's exactly what you need to let go of, right? Because you have high performers don't get stuck chased because they're good enough. They get stuck because they've outgrown the version of themselves that allowed them to get there in the first place. I don't know if I got clear with that.
Yeah, yeah, that's 100%. You nailed it there, because it's something, while you were saying this, I came across something where no leader can be a great leader on their own. Yeah. And when people say, what do you mean by that? It's like, that's probably one of the things that you can never, ever, ever do on your own. And I probably get people to come back to me and say, well, I disagree. Please comment all you really want. But the fact is that every leader, every great leader out there has never, ever, ever become that person on their own.
Absolutely.
Okay. And when they say why, who, I said, well, they've always had somebody to help them get to where they need to get to. Right.
Absolutely.
We may be talking about in the corporate sector, for example. Yeah, you have coaches, you have mentors, but the same thing applies if you're in another high performance sort of sector, like, let's say, for example, in the sports industry. Usain Bolt did not become the fastest man in the world on his own, and he can never say that, and he
Yeah.
will never say that.
It's a
Okay.
team effort. It's, yeah.
There you go, right? And and that goes without saying, where leadership within itself is also fearful. There is also fear that you're afraid as well with that, but you need some sort of reassurance, and that's where people come into it.
Absolutely. And when you link this also to when we talk about leadership, what AI is doing, Chait, is exactly exposing that weak leadership. When I say weak leadership, I would say for many years, leaders kind of operated on control, information asymmetry was there, and hierarchy. And especially in this region, we've seen a lot of that. Now, AI is removing those advantages, that control, the information asymmetry that was there. Information is now accessible, decisions are very fast, and teams are expected to be much more autonomous. So that's generally happening. So, what's left is the question. The real leadership needs to now show clarity of vision and decision making under absolutely maybe ambiguous situations, showing emotional intelligence or empathy, for example, and being truly able to aspire um, and align people. And AI can generate that context for you, right? Analyze your data, even suggest strategies. You can use AI for all of that, but it can never replace judgment or context or human connection. So leaders then who struggled were the ones who really relied on authority. And what do they need to rely on is influence, right? That's what they need to kind of focus on, or process over really thinking. So the ones who really thrive, in my perspective, will be the ones who actually partner with AI, great, and use that to elevate their teams to move faster, to focus on what truly matters. Because AI won't replace leaders, but it will make it now very obvious for who was never really leading to begin with. It's just very easy to see that. And this is the first time that we're actually seeing these changes come out in the organization.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's
Yeah.
basically highlighting who's not leading. Actually, when I actually didn't think of it that way, but when you put it into that perspective, it clears a lot of things up, and it does do that in who that is. That's really, really good. So you burn the rules, or you burnt the rule of apply and wait. Okay? What does the real game actually look like for someone sitting in the GCC right now trying to grow?
Well, I have to give the current regional context also in mind because it is also impacting how things are being looked at this moment. Yes, I was very heavily reliant on the networking. So if someone wants to really grow, learn in whatever their respective capacity is, learn the or get used to or get more comfortable with AI advancements in your kind of space. So if it is supply chain, learn about the AI advancement in supply chain. If it is HR, it is HR. If it is data, then learn data, finance, etc. So be very used to what are the advancements happening with the use of AI. They're great tools, they're great platforms that are out there that can actually help you get versed with it. Once you are heavily versed with it, then you can build your own agents and go on from there. But I think that's something that you need to keep upskilling. That skill set is important for you to take through, especially in the region right now. I would see that yes, there are challenges, but then there are certain industries who would greatly flourish during this time when it comes to retail, for example, and other spaces. So a lot of, or maybe even e-commerce and digital, that should flourish. So a lot of opportunities will come in where previously perhaps it was not visibly available. So I think candidates in the region who are trying to grow, especially during this time, especially in certain sectors, they would be great opportunities for people to start exploring new ways of doing things, faster ways of doing things, more efficient ways of doing things in their spaces or line of work. So I think those are the few things that I typically see out there. But again, the bottom line is relationship building, building that network of people. We have great seminars out here that kind of getting in touch with the decision makers is very important. So, in your space, for example, you're a product manager, then getting in touch with the different e commerce companies or digital or tech companies out there with the CDOs or the CIOs, that's your kind of soundboard that you need to be seen around with and speaking to with, really helping them solve their business problems.
Yeah,
And when
yeah,
they see that, instead of you approaching with, oh, I'm looking for an opportunity. That's great that you're looking for an opportunity. There are thousands who are looking for opportunity. But what can you do to solve their pain points at that point of time needs to be the kind of conversations that you need to drive. So that gets the pull, uh, from decision makers when they listen to candidates out in the market.
yeah. It's interesting because one of the 2 points there, the great thing is the fact that there is lots of AI tools out there. So as you said, look at sort of the AI tools that affect the industry that you're in and upskill yourself and start learning from that perspective. That is gold, because I think that's what everybody should actually start doing anyway. Even if you're not looking for a new role, or if you're not in on the market or anything, even in your current roles, this is what will set you apart from so many other people as well. So you want to basically upskill yourself in that. And it is a continuous learning cycle. And I think the fact that AI has been introduced more globally now, that it's something that we need to take advantage of, because it's easy. It's not a difficult challenge to take advantage of. This is easy to actually go and actually learn. There's so much information out there. And that's really key in what you've basically touched on with making sure that people do what they do. And the other thing that you mentioned was the relationship, going back on the relationship side. And when you talked about the networking events and the events that happen in the region, and I think this is pretty much for any region anywhere in the world, whenever there's network events happening. And what I'm trying to get at is that if you're in the market and you're looking for a job, rather than going in and saying this is what I offer, okay, you also want to almost not make it about you. And I say this a lot to people when they are going to sort of these networking events, is that, look, if someone was to come up to me and they start blabbering on about them, it'll bore me straight away. I'll be like, well, what do you want? Okay, and it'll come very. I'll come across very blunt, and it might come across rude, but not intentional. because all that person has done is made it about them. Yeah. I want people to come and ask me about me. And I think everybody else is like that as well. You want to pay an interest in them. And when you pay an interest in them, what you're actually doing is actually you are requirements gathering. Okay. I call it a requirements gathering process. Obviously, I come from a tech background, so I understand that. But this is almost a human requirements gathering process where you make it about them by asking them, finding the interests that you have. What do you have in common? It does not matter whether they are a CEO of a company and you are not. Okay. And you're at completely maybe 4 or 5 levels below, whatever it is, I can assure you that you will find something in common with the individual because you're human, right?
Absolutely.
It's not about anything else. And that's what you want to find. And that person will then remember you
Yeah.
based on that, regardless of how
Absolutely.
busy their work is.
100%. Yeah. I think that commonality, finding that commonality, this is not really small talk. This is how literally, relationships can last and long. So I think that's very, very important that, what are the things that you are navigating through, the challenges that you're navigating through? Who are you, in this region? What has your story been? Understanding that with the full enthusiasm, with the empathy, and making sure that there is proper relationship building. When we do these access mapping, which I was speaking about, and then you use your tech term, which is the same from the other side, this is exactly what it needs to focus on. It needs to really focus on those not small talk conversations or coming really straight to the point that this is what I need, but what do they want, exactly like
Yeah.
how you highlighted. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you build a long lasting relationship with which it's always a give and take. Yeah.
Hmm.
And how can I help you today, and then they can help you tomorrow, and then that's how businesses and relationships thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on, you were quoted saying the worst thing you can do for your CV is write down your job description.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Can you explain that? Because most people think that's exactly what a CV is for.
God. Yeah, no, it is not. Yeah, and if they think like that, then they need to really reach out to me, because
Yes.
this is really a very improper understanding. I'm very nicely putting it, improper understanding. So no, but seriously, I listen. If I'm looking at reading the JD Square, that's JD for the second time again on your CV, then I'm not interested, because I have a JD in front of me. Let's assume for a learning and development manager. Yeah, within the HR space, and this L&D candidate is exactly right in that same JD. I mean, nothing stands out for me. So I can't see JD being written twice. What a CV really needs to depict is, what do you bring to that role? So for example, what have you done in the L&D space that makes you stand out, and what has your outcomes been? What is the impact that you have driven in the market? So I don't want to see another JD on your CV. I don't want to see verbatim written words and text heavy CVs. I want to see, what have you done in the L&D space that makes you stand out, versus 10 other candidates that I might see the screen, the CV off, and screen the CV off, and I might not like them or like them. So why do I need to shortlist you? So that's your storyline. Your CV is your best, I would say, foot forward in the area of the space that you have actually mastered over the years. So if I'm a total rewards person, then I will say that this is what I've done in the total rewards space, and these are the outcomes or the KPIs that I've driven, and this is the impact to the organization. But if I write a JD and I copy paste it, then you don't tell me anything about you. So most and it puts off a lot of recruiters when we see JDs being written on a CV. So CV needs to be about you, what you delivered on that role, and your story. And if it becomes another JD, then it loses the impact and value. So simply put.
Wow, that is important. Yeah, because actually that's a good point, because you don't want to see 2 job descriptions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
And it sounds like when you say it makes it about you, something else that came to mind was that, especially on CVs, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to know this too, to understand what does that actually mean when you said about sort of making it that your CV about you, is making it more sort of quantitative rather than qualitative, right? And like even putting down sort of things like the percentages of something, what you have achieved. Okay, that's really important, because people like numbers. They see that thinking, wow, okay, you've done that. And that's a really great question even when you're in interviews, for example, to sort of ask towards, and it's easier for you as an individual to even answer it too, right? It's like, okay, I did it this way, and it's more enjoyable. It's not just a, it's just not a one-way conversation when you're in having these conversations about a job that you're applying for. So would you say that's also important as well?
Yes, but if it is done rightly. So when
Hmm.
I say rightly is you can tell me that, let's say that I improve the GMV, which is your sales, by 30% in your CV. And you're not quoting the number behind it because it is confidential for whatever reason. But 30% doesn't mean anything to me still. It's a flat percentage. So what makes sense is you can show the uplift that you did. So from 22% to 30% under 1 year or in 1 quarter or whatever it is, then that makes sense. So from and to is very important. So if you're using numbers, use it elegantly and rightly and with and making sense. So from and to is very important in a CV. If you're hesitant to put in numbers, use percentages. This is absolutely fine, but it needs to have a reference point. What is that baseline? And if there's no baseline, then I can say 150%, and nobody understands what, uh, of what, from where did I start from, or what did that lead to, and what did that 100. The next part is the impact. What did that 150% then lead to? Is what you also need to then kind of write. So yes, quantitative is great. I also look for qualitative. If you have done great projects or volunteering work, or have submitted a thesis which is remarkably necessary to be mentioned, or maybe you have some excursions or activities that you're very proud of, you're a great paddle player or whatever, please feel free to do that too in the sections that are there in the respective CV. But yes, you can go qualitative, but if you're doing quantitative, you've just got to enter it correctly. Otherwise, it just loses value.
Yeah, I'm going to make note of that,
Yeah.
especially if I ever have to do my CV ever again.
We'll work on that then.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I actually created a CV, to be honest. But it's good to know. Something, this episode will definitely be something on my favorites, that's for sure, to go back towards. So, Anam, what's one rule you've burnt for yourself and realized you are now in control after burning it?
I would say that I assumed for the longest period of time that great talent would be naturally recognized and rewarded. And to me, I got that wrong. It does not come naturally. And I come back to what I've said before. I want to give it a little bit of an instance because this really happened when I was leading in one of the companies that I work with. I saw a very high performing individual, Jade, who was delivering very high, strong outcomes. But they were just not visible to the leadership. And during our calibration discussions, when promotion discussions came up, that person was overlooked completely. Why did that happen? And that was a turning point for me. I realized that their amazing performance wasn't enough. What did they need? They needed strategic visibility and advocacy. So, no matter you had everything, you are a top notch performer and whatever it is, and you've met your KPIs or exceeded your KPIs, then what I changed for myself, which is what I got wrong, is I stopped assuming that great talent would be naturally recognized and rewarded. So, I changed to positioning my talent, positioning them very strategically and not just managing them. I ensured the high performers were in the right rooms, in the right projects, and I now coach individuals on how to communicate their impact and not just deliver it. It's not just about delivery, but how do you communicate effectively your impact? There are so many people who would say in the workspace, oh, now I have changed this, I have changed this. I was like, has anybody heard that? Has anybody seen it? But if I cannot see it and you have not done the job of communicating your impact, then nobody hears it. And then that's where, a lot of the top performers feel disgruntled because they've not done a fair share of effort towards that. So now my coaching and placement work that I do, there is a core principle. If no one sees your value, it doesn't scale. That's simply put. And that's what I got wrong most of the years. And I started feeling that, I mean, I would say after the first 10 years of my career is where I started really navigating and changing my mindset into helping people in these three directions that I mentioned.
So visibility is key, but then it's also the impact based on that too. Yeah, because you can just be visible, but then also understanding what impact are you having with this too. Who knows about it?
Yes.
Who's heard about it? Yeah. Okay.
And
That's
how
powerful.
effectively do you communicate that impact
Yeah.
also, right? Your communication. When we say in the organization, communicate, communicate, communicate,
Okay.
that's key,
Yeah.
to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you led, I mean, going back a little bit and talking a little bit about pressure, you led a workforce optimization at MAF. And this obviously involved sort of making a lot of tough calls on cost,
Mm.
structure, and people. That means you've been the one sort of delivering the news that changes someone's life completely. Yeah. So a lot of instances you've been in that situation. What does that actually do to you personally?
I would say when these are high stakes, right?
Mm,
Environments where yes, nobody likes to do cost optimization and be in processes like that. When stakes rise like this in any kind of organization that you work with, what one needs to start becoming is, before I come to myself, is becoming very clarity obsessed and execution focused for that period of time. So I basically strip everything back to what really needs to make the business move forward first. Earlier in my career, Shade, I would really over index on consensus, bring everyone along, etc. And yeah. But in high stakes, it's like cost optimization and everything. Speed matters much more than comfort, right? And it's a very ruthless statement to say, but it does matter more than comfort. For example, if you have to reduce cost while still scaling growth, then instead of prolonged alignment loops that you can run in organization, one should focus on identifying very quickly, these are my critical roles, these are the ones that can be replaced. Bam, making fast and data decisions, and communicating transparently even if it is uncomfortable, because people really like clarity rather than being liked at that point of time. They really want leaders to offer them clarity. That ambiguity, the ambiguity around those situations really doesn't help the organization or the people at work to come in with a certain mood every day. So you've got to give them clarity earlier on, right? And then move forward. So give them clarity earlier on. Let them know what that path will look like, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it is challenging. Do your best during that time to make that uncomfortable road as empathetic, and do it with highest level of empathy and emotional intelligence, so that they see the human side of you and they know that yes, it is impacting. It is not Anam's decision, it is the company's decision, and kind of, but it is, and the reason why we're doing that is for so and so reason. So nobody expects to be liked at this point of time. But the least thing that you can do is not being clear, keeping them in that ambiguity, right? So that's what I try to deliver in these kind of situations. And I've done that a few times, and this has really worked. And also taking care of people. I mean, being as the funny the interesting part is, I've led cost optimization exercises despite the fact that the business was growing, right? And we still turned out at the year end with the highest organizational health index as compared to that respective operating unit. Why? Why were our employees still okay? Is a big question. We did downsizing, and we still have an OHI that is good, and it increased versus previous years, simply because we gave them clarity during that uncertain time. We took care. As much as you take care of people during their employee life cycle, you gracefully take care of them at exits also. So I gracefully took care of them at exits as much as possible, helping people even navigate through their CVs. If there is any gap that I see there with my team, helping them even connect with the right people. Because, yeah, okay, you might have left us, but you can possibly go to different people out there in the market. And employees who are leaving us, they really appreciate that, because then you held their hand when they really needed that certainty. So that's how I typically tend to focus. Yes, it impacts you. emotionally too, but then you can't have that facade. And as long as you do it so elegantly like this, the way that I've mentioned, it is very gratifying and it's very humbling in nature, I would say, because I can be in the same position. Everybody
Yeah.
can be in the same position. So what I would always tell myself and my team is, how would we like to be treated if we are on the other side one day?
It's quite
That's the
intense
way.
though, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, yeah. And that's what we do, right? So not an easy thing to do, but you can still do it in the absolute humane way as possible.
So a slightly different sort of question here now, moving on, is you worked in a predominantly male dominated industry.
Yeah.
Okay. And based on the companies that you've mentioned and the industries that you worked on, and described your formula for being heard as show up with irrefutable data. Yeah. When you were earlier in your career and didn't yet have the data, what did you do then?
I wouldn't take that as an excuse that I didn't have the data, right, before going into a meeting. Chit, I was in the first company that I worked with was Tinaris, and that is an oil and gas company. We were, and that was such a great platform. They say that school, that your first organization, if it is great, becomes that institution for you, that school
Yeah.
for you, and it truly did become. I spent 6 years there. And the way that we were kind of taught is that go prepared, go heavily prepared in meetings, because we will train you to be in front of whether it's a board or the CEO from the time you are a global trainee, GT. And I was a GT, and I was sitting in the meeting room with Paolo Roca, who's the CEO of Tenaris till today. Yeah. So we were trained to do that. We were trained to be thrown into the waters and then kind of swim our way through, and learn and navigate. So I think, what does that do? They say that involve me and I will learn. The last part of the phrase, involve me and I learn, I think that's very important. When you start involving your team that you manage very earlier on in the process, they learn very well. They learn the most when they are in meeting rooms, when they're
Yeah.
in the decision making process. They don't learn from what you cascade to them. No, no. And sometimes you need to let them explore also, or maybe even make mistake, fail fast, move forward. So for me, and this is how I was, kind of trained from the very beginning, is it's okay to be wrong, but be there in those intense discussion, learn from there, see what is required to prepare. The first time I may get wrong, the next time I would know exactly what to prepare for, the third time I would have actually anticipated what those questions will look like of the CEO, and the fourth time I will probably ace it and even answer it much more elegantly than before. So it's just a vicious circle of, if innovating, reinventing, and learning yourself. Learn, unlearn is what we kind of do. So I would really say that, and despite being in male dominated industries, I never felt like that during my career. I think maybe to do with the fact that I was very resilient in the workplace. I was always very data driven, fact driven, but also outcome and impact focused. And I enjoyed communicating, right? So I really enjoyed delivering that message. And I was never shy away, I would never shy away from delivery of that message. So I think that helped me progress through the career very well. And I never saw the fact that I am in a gender, unbalanced kind of an industry. So I think that's what I would say. If people dive into being involved from very early on, they learn the most in their careers, and they will
Yeah.
learn how to navigate the workplace much more effectively.
It kind of beats the purpose of, like, when they say that the term being thrown in the deep end.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that no amount of training can replicate this.
Yeah.
Where
Yes.
whether you're in a room and you're teaching somebody how to sort of operate in these situations. And I say that with my hands held high, because I provide a lot of these sort of leadership type trainings. But it's very true. These trainings can provide these sort of the fundamentals and the basics. But it's one thing I always say to people is, what are you going to do now to apply this? And this is where this comes in. You understand the fundamentals, the basics, but you have to be thrown in the deep end. right? To actually then now figure out, how do I now articulate myself here? How do I handle this sort of situation? And the great thing about having trainings, and I'm not saying trainings are useless at all, right? Is the fact that you've given something to somebody with already almost like something to think about. They're not going in blind either. You've
It's
almost
playbook
coached
you
them
have
to it
given.
as well, right? Yeah, exactly. You've provided them a playbook. But with that whole experience and everything that you've gone through, what would you say you have learned about yourself that's changed the person that you are today?
I would say that over the years, and especially because of the you mentioned about the male dominated industries, I would say something that I did not kind of depict earlier on in my career was being vulnerable, and I was not doing that, right? Naturally, not doing that in the whole male dominated industry. Did learn that that is actually an asset, and you can be and you must be, whether you are, male or female, it doesn't matter. So that is something that I have changed over time, that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be not knowing all the answers. It's fine. Yeah. I don't need to have an answer for everything. A lot of my previous bosses would be like, Anam, you don't have to answer at everything, so you don't need to have an answer for everything. And that's true. I used to be one person that, if I was asked a question, I needed to answer, and well, most of the time I knew the answer. So, so I will have to say it. But I learned over time that you don't need to have the perfect answer. You don't need to be having a very hard facade all the time. Sometimes it's okay. We're humans at the end of the day. And that's one thing that I changed about myself. It's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to be vulnerable. And I practiced consciously over years to be much more empathetic at the workplace, simply because my persona is built in such a way that I've always been seen as, if you understand the saboteur assessment, I've always been seen as a high performer and a stickler, and those are my top two saboteurs. And high performers tend to be very unforgiving sometimes of themselves and of their teams, because they expect high expectations. And that is something that I've really changed over the years. So it's okay, you might not be on my pace, but then I will work with you and try to find your best spot and be much more empathetic and help you see the best in yourself. Yes, it takes a little more time and effort, but I'm willing to do that to make the work environment a better place. So I think that's something that I've changed over the years, or
And it takes
evolved.
time. Yeah, you mean you evolve into it, of course. Yeah, and it does take time. It's not an overnight fix in any means from
Yeah,
that perspective.
absolutely.
So just going back onto sort of a bit about the AI side of things. So AI is now inside the hiring process, as you've mentioned, and you've been inside an AI hiring platform at a
Yep.
CPO level as well. So you've seen how the engine actually works. What does a leader or high potential talent need to understand about how AI is changing what actually gets you noticed and what gets you filtered out?
So these are so the way that you get noticed is, how do you typically build your personal branding effectively? And when I say that, it's a big word, but what I mean is starting all the way from your CV. Let's assume that you are in the space of, I would say, an engineer in the digital space. Then what are the right keywords, ATS friendly words, that help you get noticed out when my platform or any other platform is reading that? How can you stand out by using the right keywords on your CV, rather than it being a jargon of a lot of words? Yeah. How do you effectively write your CV in a way that is also legible and easily readable by the different platforms? So keep your CV simple, left to right, no boxes or whatever it is. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And make it measurable. Have the right KPIs, have the right outcomes for the kind of jobs that you're working in. That makes your CV stand out. You've done the work on your CV, great, that's a tick box. Then let's move on to LinkedIn. Majority of the platforms are kind of seeing your profiles on your open source profiles, right? So how do you basically, if I'm using a LinkedIn recruiter, for example, how does your profile then stand out for me when I am going to be using their recruiter account and then trying to look for maybe that engineer with a certain tech stack experience and etc., with X many years of experience. You need to stand out. So if your CV has done beautifully, CV has been beautifully updated, but you did not do that same justice to your LinkedIn, I will never see you.
Yeah,
That's it.
of
I will
course.
never see you. So you have got to replicate exactly that level of detail onto your LinkedIn also, which
Right.
means that your visibility online can increase, I would say, drastically. And then once you've done that update on LinkedIn, how do you then position yourself to the online community? How do you reach? One is the relationship building that you can do with offline decision makers and everything, but how do you reach to the online decision makers?
Yeah.
What is that effective method of doing that? And that's your personal branding online. And that's kind of typically what I coach people how to do that. Those are those key elements for you to stand out in a market like that, besides doing the traditional, I would say, offline networking that you do. So if you don't do these things, there is no platform in the world that will find you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be
True.
sitting, you might be the best talent, but you did not represent yourself online. So that's
Yeah.
what talents need to know effectively to really stand out
Yeah,
in
I
the
say that all
in
the
yes.
time to people as well. Use LinkedIn. It is
Yeah.
the most powerful platform and probably the only powerful platform out there to actually take advantage of. Lovely. So, what's one move the listener or the watchers, to be honest, can make this week to get in front of the right people, not later, not when they're ready, but this week?
Well, look at the jobs that you are passionate for example, or the industries that you're passionate for. Find a problem that they're currently that industry, for example, is currently undergoing, and that's a research that you can do. And then reach out to that respective decision maker saying, this is how you've sorted that problem out in the past and would love to do the same. And let's catch up for a discussion, let's catch up for a coffee, and let me take you through the steps of how am I going to navigate that. So those are kind of the kind of discussions that you can have.
Excellent. Yeah. So 100%, just always reach out. Don't hesitate. Yeah.
Yep,
Get
absolutely.
yourself out there. Great. Right. Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
quick game. It's called 10 and done. 10 questions, short answers, no thinking. Okay. And we're going to go for it. You ready for this?
Okay, let's do it.
Question number one. First 30 minutes of your day. What actually happens?
I scroll through my mobile, which I shouldn't, and then I tend to my little infant.
There you
Sorry.
go, right? Multiple things. Well, you just had a child, so I mean, look, that's understandable, right? It's
Yeah.
more than one thing, I'm guessing. Okay, what's number two? Most overrated word in leadership right now?
Boardrooms. Everybody's saying boardrooms. This is a chat GPT-ish generated thing. Leadership is boardrooms. Boardrooms leadership. So
Fantastic. Number three, a rule everyone follows that you think is wrong.
um rule everyone follows everything is wrong. Okay, I don't have to overthink this. Um alignment.
Number four, best investment you've made on yourself or in yourself.
Getting married.
Number five, a book that changed how you think. So, one title.
Wow, there's so many books that I read, and I don't remember a single name of the book at this point of time. Yes, yes, Surrounded by Idiots. I
There you
like
go.
that.
That's a brilliant book, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Number six, what do you never compromise on?
I would say I never compromise on effort. Effort has to be made in everything. Yeah.
Love it. Number seven, biggest myth in your field.
Biggest myth in my field would be, oh, oh yeah, well, that AI will replace HR.
Wow. Yeah,
That's
that's a
not going
big
to
one. That's a big one.
happen.
Number 8, what are you currently trying to unlearn?
I'm currently trying to unlearn being being a multitasker and being available for everyone and every time. Yeah, it's challenging.
Isn't it? Yeah. Number 9, one word your toughest critic would use about you.
My toughest critic would say that I never give up.
And the last one, number 10, what's the next version of you working on?
What I want to give back, Chait, is now that I'm coaching people navigating the workspace, and I'm also quite advanced in the whole AI embracement within HR, I actually would love to teach people and give back to the companies of how their HR functions can be actually elevated. I can teach them the different AI things that are there in the HR space, how they can make much more better use of their time, learn the different platforms out there. Most of them are actually free, and really effectively start making decisions much more nimbly and effectively going forward. So that's something that I'm kind of planning to offer as a great masterclass back to
I
the
love that.
community.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. So love that. Anam, where can people find you if they want to work with you or follow what you're building? Yeah.
Buddies, find me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me on and direct DM me on the LinkedIn. I will also share my perhaps my email address so that you can also reach out to me via email if you have any. Um, well, if you want to take up coaching activities or you want to learn further more about the masterclass that I'm going to be offering to various corporations out there. But yeah, all available whenever you reach out to me.
Excellent. And then we'll put that all in the show notes as well so everybody has access to that. And last of all, what's one thing you want someone to walk away from this conversation and do differently this week?
Well, I would say start learning what the advancements are there. Or actually, I would say no. I would say unlearn your current way of doing things. Challenge yourself. Are you doing the way that you've been doing these things over the years? Could you do it differently? And challenge yourself to actually learn a new skill of doing that same report or that same Excel, but run by AI. Just try to challenge yourself. Of course, if it is legally allowed by your respective company to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
There
Which
you
is
go,
also
100%. Challenge yourself and don't question yourself in that respect. So
absolutely.
make sure you take action and do that. So Anam, thank you so much for being part of the episode today. We've had a fantastic time. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise, Jade. It was a great discussion. I really, really enjoyed it. It's fantastic. And thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Before you go, take a moment to think about what stayed with you from this conversation. Not what sounded impressive, but what challenged how you think, decide, or lead. See, leadership isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice internally, daily, and deliberately. And remember this, you can't lead a life that matters by following the rules of the game. If this episode gave you perspective, share it with someone who's ready to take more control of how they lead and perform. And subscribe wherever you listen and keep redefining leadership in your own